Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today with these two distinguished women in tech. And Ty, I would like to start off by just thanking you for blazing the trail at Amherst. I'm an Amherst 1987 graduate, and thank you very much for paving the way for the rest of us.
Thank you for being younger than me.
And Gabriella, I'm really happy to be here talking with you now, because one thing that we've been talking a lot about in our research at 451 in the tech industry is the importance of partnerships in technology these days.
Yep.
Whereas back in the early days of the 1970s, you didn't have tech partnerships. You had an IBM mainframe. You had a storage array from one company, and you bought everything from one company. And in both of the way that you have made your major way in tech, both of your businesses are a lot about partnerships, where, how do you bring everybody together to create a complete solution for the maximum number of people?
Yeah.
So one way I wanted to start this conversation was talking about where we are in tech right now. And in this era of digital transformation, I would almost say that tech is business and business is tech to some extent. Mm-hmm. You have technology is used to make things we already do more efficient, more automated, in a way that's kind of the old way of IT. And the new way is to use technology to help solve problems we didn't know we had before. So I wanted to start out by getting both of your perspectives on things. And do we have an opportunity here to advance inclusiveness and diversity by looking at IT in this new way, the digital way of solving problems rather than setting up storage arrays and making sure the top of rack switches are working?
Yes.
Would you like to start with that?
Yeah, I think we're just at the inception of the technology revolution. Even like I think the IBM PC really ignited the PC revolution in 1981, early 1980s. But 40 years later, we're still at the inception. I do think that the next decades to come is going to be amazing. And we're all going to have a lot of opportunities to participate. So, and pretty much across every boardroom, the board members are having conversations about how we transform our company, because every business is becoming a technology business, which is going to really provide a lot of opportunities for those of us who are starting new business today.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that business is tech, tech is business. It means that we have to break through on a number of fronts. When my daughter went through a STEM curriculum in high school, and that whole STEM curriculum taught her that technology, computer science, was about coding. It was about being a developer. There are 1,000 different roles in technology, right? And as technology takes over every business, there are probably 1 million different roles to have in technology. We need to expand that curriculum. We need to expand people's minds. We need to help people understand that there are 1 million different roles that you can have in technology, and that they have a place in that, and that's how we break through in diversity and inclusion. There is a certain kind of person, and I'm not saying it's a guy, but I'm saying there is a certain kind of person that wants to sit in front of a computer and code all day, right? And then there are people who can use their skills in a lot of other ways. And I am an accidental technologist. I did not go to school for technology. As a matter of fact, software was really at the very beginning stages when I was going through school, so that I didn't even think about that as an option. But I stumbled into it because I was here. And it has been amazing, and there are opportunities everywhere. What I'm worried about is that as companies transform through digital transformation, it displaces jobs.
Exactly.
And the jobs that get displaced are primarily female-held jobs. And if we continue this trend of declining women in technology, we will not have a place for women in the business world. And we need to change that. Every single one of us needs to change that.
And I think one way that we can probably start looking at that is technology and digital. It's all about helping to solve problems nobody knew they had. And, as women, we are really good at solving problems. We're good at solving everybody's problems, everybody's problems. And, you look at, your inspiration for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. My current female inspiration right now is, not to get too political, but Nancy Pelosi. And, talk about being able to solve problems.
Yeah.
So, one thing I also wanted to bring up is this whole idea of inclusivity and women in tech. Up until now, it's kind of been seen as a political problem, basically fairness, that, it's not fair that, and our research shows something similar, that about 25% of female or IT employees in organizations are female. But, the great thing about it is that if you look at companies that are more digital transformation oriented, that number goes up to 40%. You look at industries where there's a lot of innovation and a lot of disruption going on. Healthcare is one of them. We're seeing higher numbers of female IT employees in healthcare, media and entertainment, government, now that it's open, really good thing. And, so I just wanted to get a sense from both of you is, to what extent do women need to be present just because we are half the population? And to what extent does the tech industry suffer from the lack of inclusivity and the lack of diversity in that respect?
So I run a technology company, but ironically, or maybe not ironically, I am one of the least technical savvy person at my company, SHI. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be technically savvy in order to run a successful business in technology. That's one thing. I echo what Gabriela said. Actually, in 1975, I got accepted into MIT, and I wanted to go to MIT. Why? Because I knew I was only going to take math and science courses, which was the case at Amherst. Why? Because I wanted to get all A's. My father prevented me from going to MIT, and his reasoning is I would never find find a husband if I went to MIT. And even though he was very modern in his approach and really open-minded in terms of his daughter's career, that was actually the reality. So I think I looked up MIT's matriculation this year. It's almost, not quite, but almost 50-50. So the world has changed. It's definitely not moving fast enough in a boardroom. It's not moving fast enough in a tech entrepreneur landscape, but it is moving. As for SHI, without actually explicitly having the statement, we are almost 50-50 as a company in terms of women and male gender balance. And in fact, the department that actually earns the most money is in sales and services, where it really is a customer-facing roles. We have about 2,500 such individuals, and we have 4 vice presidents who are in those roles, 2 women, 2 men. Of the women, one is IQ 150, Harvard MBA master's. The other woman is just as smart and is a high school graduate. So when I think about inclusivity, I think about not just gender, ethnic, racial, religious, but also educational background and other opportunity-based inclusivity. For me, what matters most is what one is able to contribute rather than what is on the resume. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could say it better than that. To your question, all of the research shows that organizations that have high levels of diversity have higher levels of earnings, have higher levels of innovation. And so it is a must. It is a critical imperative that organizations have more diversity. And the question is, how do we get to more diversity faster, rather than should we have a more inclusive environment, or is it important?
Right. And what are some of the things I've been thinking about in terms of how we get that diversity is by providing that access.
Yes.
And one of my main things is tied to your point. You mentioned that one of the biggest divisions in your organization is the sales and service, the part that is customer facing. Because at the end of the day, we're all technology consumers in one way or another. And one story I found really interesting that there were these two women who were very enthusiastic about fitness, and they had gotten into triathlons. And what happened was they couldn't find a sports watch that really worked for them. It was either too bulky, it was too big, it wasn't flexible enough. And so what they did was they decided to go and create their own sports watch to their own specifications. And what ended up happening was they had trouble with funding. They went to a lot of VCs, and a lot of them couldn't figure out, well, there are all kinds of sports watches out there. Why do we need another one? This makes no sense. So they did a Kickstarter campaign, got the money to create the prototypes. They ended up with $500,000 in pre-orders in pretty rapid succession. And it turned out that 20% of those pre-orders were from men. Which I thought was an amazing story because, something designed for women, by women, turned out to be something that a lot of other people could use and take advantage of as well. And so that's one thing that I wanted to get a sense from you, Gabriela, in terms of Microsoft. Like, how is Microsoft infusing that inclusivity design focus into the products and services that you're creating, and how do we get more people with that mindset in tech direct industries and also tech adjacent industries?
Yeah, so Microsoft does something called customer-focused design. And so customer-focused design means that throughout the process of development, we actually bring in customers to help us to create that design, so that we are being reflective of the consumer or the business that we want to sell that product to. And then we continue to drive for higher levels of diversity within the organization. We have the 10 inclusive behaviors also throughout Microsoft on how you actually create an inclusive environment. Because it's one thing to have inclusive hiring practices and bring diverse talent into the organization. It's another thing to make sure that when they're there, they feel like they can speak up. They feel like they can share their voice and be heard. And so we encourage these 10 inclusive behaviors as well to get everybody's voice on the table. So if one person thinks, oh, I don't think that would work. I don't think that would fit. And when you're, if you're a woman and you're doing this, I don't think that would be a good idea. And so, we encourage people to speak up and share their ideas, and it goes right into the whole design process.
Okay, great. And Ty, a question for you. You run a very different type of business than Microsoft. But I'm wondering, in your perspective, to what extent does the whole idea of inclusiveness and diversity and differences of perspective, how has that helped you move your business forward?
So we are Microsoft business partner.
One of the best.
Globally, as well as in the US. As a business owner and CEO, we have to be focused on merit. in order to promote and provide opportunities. So we have, in my opinion, no choice but to actually consider each candidate based on one's merit. And that often means that a lot of women, women of color, men of color, get opportunity at SHI that might not be maybe as readily available. I do think that the awareness of diversity and importance of diversity really have arisen. Perhaps the results are not as good today or clear as we would like today, but I do think that there is strong awareness. There are a lot of advocates within not only SHI, but also throughout some of the leading organizations and companies to make sure that we are being inclusive as an organization. I would say that certainly has existed for SHI from the inception, perhaps because of my background, but because most of all, because we had to, in order to really achieve maximum performance for the company.
Well, that's why I'm really inspired by you, Ty, as I am by all entrepreneurs, where the whole idea is that I'm going to make my own opportunities and I'm going to bring opportunity to other people as well as part of that. So kudos to you for being that type of entrepreneur.
Thank you.
And I guess the one last thing in the last couple minutes we have left, I wanted to get your perspectives on, bringing it back to this whole idea of digital technology again. And one thing that we look at a lot at 451 Research is how everything is not just a digital-driven business, it's a data-driven business. Yep. And we've been hearing a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning and the importance of data. And I just wanted to get your perspectives on, do we have an opportunity right now to force this change around access and inclusivity and diversity? Because everybody's afraid that the machines are going to be taking over. So how important is it that we have diversity in who's programming those machines and hopefully the wisdom to make sure that they don't take over? So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So first, along those lines, there is a huge skills gap in the marketplace, right? For anybody who has the skills to do, digital technology.
And that's a very new skill. It's not
It's
old school
all
coding.
new, right? And so it's something that everyone has to relearn. And so it's an opportunity that actually creates access because everyone has to relearn together. And so I think that this is the moment and a huge opportunity for us to reshape the diversity within the industry. I also think it is critical, to your point, as we're building new algorithms, as we are thinking about what does this data science mean and how do you use this data, that we have really diverse perspectives on it from all over the world, from all walks of life, so that we don't build in any kind of bias. We all have bias. It's a human instinct to be judgmental and to make quick decisions, and we have to take the bias out of the AI as we build this machine learning. And so it's critical that we do have very high degrees of diverse representation in building that and better ways of making sure that we're taking the bias out and that we have very inclusive practices in the way that we build that.
Right, exactly. And Ty, I'm wondering if I can get your perspective on this as well, as you've shifted the business of SHI from hardware to software and then into services. How are you seeing this play into the overall operation of your business and maybe some of the different types of people you have to look for as employees?
So any business in this industry has to constantly reset its organization, and it really does level the playing field. So the incumbents actually lose a lot of benefits and actually advantages as the landscape changes. So that is opportunity for all of you. As I look around the table, I see Microsoft, I see AWS. I'm not sure whether there was a Google or there's a Google, IBM. We have a lot of high-level women executives, an organization that is at the forefront of changing the digital transformation and leading it. I mean, we ask all of you to actually go back to your organizations and actually be part of that change agent for your organization. I think this is a great start. This is a great summit, and this is a starting point.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy that you were able to join me on stage today. And one thing I'd like to take away or have everybody go away with, I attended Google's Next Summit in San Francisco last summer, and the first time this ever happened to me at a tech event, there were long lines at the ladies' room.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Be the change.
Oh, no. You guys stay there. You can't get off that easy, ladies. Come on now. We are going to take a question or two from both sides of the thing. So please, if you could take a seat. And I want to thank you so much, Melody. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. As you guys know, there's boxes on your tables, and they're from the Create Smiles project. So feel free to open them up, look at what's inside, and start sending them to each other, because we all have a lot to be thankful for. I always say that, and my father certainly was one of the best feminists I know, and why? Well, he had 7 daughters, so I'm not sure he had a choice. But if you look at that, and you look at all of the great men in the room, so, men, put up your hands. Put up your hands right now, both rooms. A special and strong man to come to a Women in Cloud event, and we're so happy that you guys are here. So we have a mic in the room, in both rooms, so hopefully, Wendy, you guys can see me. So we're going to go ahead, and if you have a question, we'll take a question or two, and then we can keep moving on. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful hearing about your life experiences and your advice for future generations. I have a question. I started off my career in the 80s in the engineering architectural world. And the 5 women that were part of this 2,000 strong engineering company, we would meet every Friday to help each other figure out how to be successful in a man's world and to be more like men. 30 years later, I wonder, is that the only definition of success, or can we as women redefine success to maybe create a different world?
Great question.
Well, I think that that is a terrible definition of success because I don't even think that there is a man's way. I think every individual has their own way, has a unique perspective, and what we need to do is we need to create the space to hear everybody's perspective and give everybody an opportunity to share that, to lean in, and to rumble through that conflict that is created by the fact that we each have a unique perspective. Ty?
I definitely never wanted to be just like men in order to be successful, because I'm not just women or Korean American or Asian. I see myself much more holistically than that. I'm an individual who is here on the earth only briefly, and I refuse to really put myself into that kind of corner. So, I mean, there are inspirational women everywhere. They're inspirational. You have to figure out how to inspire yourself to be the best you can be. And once again, if there are aspects of myself that cannot be changed, I try not to worry about it. Because if it can't be changed, then you really should not spend any time worrying about things that you cannot influence. So, yeah, I hope, I'm pretty sure you probably found inspiration, and you probably don't want to just be like a man, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about what matters to you and how you go after that.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Kara South, and I'm a IT manager at Boeing for the past 30 years, so I've seen it all. And so my question is related to, I started asking questions and having a voice and started asking lots of questions in Boeing and trying to understand what's going on and all that, and outside of Boeing too. And of course, the answer I got was, what's the problem? We're 50% women, 50% men. So what's the problem? And I said, well, in IT, I'm seeing on the floor and the stats that we're seeing, less than 17%. And so I said, that's the point, is ask the questions, find out more details, because the macro view is, what's the problem? We're 50%, 50%. But if you ask the detailed questions, you'll find out that majority of our female positions are in more of the administrative and process roles, and that's great, right? Support roles, but that's also where the lower salaries are. So how do you see that we can have a voice, continue to ask the questions, but also to try to encourage and to continue to show the different sides of IT that have the higher roles, that have the higher salaries? How can we encourage that? Because that's where I think the visibility and the communication for all of us that are in these fields to help women like my daughter and other women that are coming into IT to be able to understand what are the higher roles that make them more money and go after those and not settle for maybe some of the administrative things, because that tends to be traditional.
Well, I think one thing is this whole idea that business is tech and tech is business these days. So one thing I'm seeing more and more is the high paying roles and the roles that carry a lot of, clout are the roles of how are we going to use technology to get something done, rather than having it be just about technology itself. So I would suggest to any young woman starting out in tech these days, don't think about it in terms of tech. Think about it in terms of tech adjacent. Think about, any industry you can think of, and how does technology move that industry forward? How does it make it more productive? How does it make it more innovative? And go at it that way, because I think anybody with technology skills these days, particularly around data, not just traditional coding, but algorithms, data science, you can kind of go anywhere, because every company on earth is going to need you. So I think if we broaden our perspective beyond tech and consider tech just a basic skill that everybody has to have, like math, basic science, reading, language skills, I think that's the way we change things.
This is one of the things that, that's one of the things when I was watching the movie On the Basis of Sex that made me so mad, was that, here was a woman who had graduated with honors at the top of her class from two very prestigious universities, and she could not get a job practicing law, and she settled for teaching, which was socially acceptable at the time. And when I was 19, I was doing a internship, or I had a job inside of an HR department for the summer, and I was doing a lot of administrative work. And my very wise boss said to me, "Okay, I'm going to give you some advice. Never do this again. Never do this again. Do not settle for doing administrative work. Go into things that inspire you. Go into things that excite you and that drive your passion." And I think that we have to help people understand not to settle for where people put them, but to work towards the things that they aspire to do.
Thank you guys so much. I want to thank everybody on the panel. Can we have a huge round of applause for these ladies?